If British Columbia didn't want Alberta's pipeline, then Alberta didn't want BC's wine. That's mostly behind them now, but the spat highlighted the fact that trade barriers remain part of the economic and political life of our country. Joining us now for some insight into how Canadians view such interprovincial scuffles, Shachi Kurl. She's Executive Director of the Angus Reid Institute, and it's good to have you back in that chair, Shachi. Nice to see you again.
Glad to be with you.
Let's just do a couple of background questions on the chance that there are some people watching us who haven't followed every single step of this dispute. The basics. $7.4 billion Trans Mountain pipeline expansion is supposed to do what?
Okay, it's 1,150 kilometers of pipeline. It's an existing pipeline. It's been there since 1953, and it runs from Edmonton to Burnaby, which is a suburb of about 250,000 people that borders directly on Vancouver, and that is the terminus point. The idea of twinning this pipeline is to increase the amount of oil that gets from Alberta to market, to the Pacific coast and on to places beyond. And it would increase, if built, I think, and I don't speak for Kinder Morgan here, but I think it would actually increase capacity and flow, but about threefold.
And the heart of the dispute between two NDP governments in Alberta and British Columbia is what?
A little left-on-left action here. What's going on is, look, for Alberta and Albertans, this is an economic argument. This is about saying, look, in this country, we take stuff out of the ground and we ship it elsewhere, and that's how we earn our daily bread. For many, many people in British Columbia, this is about the risk to the Pacific coastline, because with all of that outflow, all of that bitumen flowing through a completed twinned pipeline, it would have the potential to increase tanker traffic off the pristine coast of the Pacific Ocean sevenfold. And the BC government makes the argument that we don't necessarily think that everyone's equipped to handle a spill or the risk to the coast if we saw a spill.
Now, you have been in the field, Angus Reid has been in the field, and we are going to share with our viewers a handful of slides of what you have learned since being in the field.
Okay.
Let's bring, Sheldon, if we can, the first one up. Which side are Canadians in general taking on this issue? And you won't be shocked to find that Canadians are quite evenly split on whether they support the BC government's position or the Alberta government's position. Do you want to take us through those second sets of bars as well?
Sure. It's a very Canadian result, right? We're split 50-50 nationally, but not a massive surprise. If you look on the right-hand side, Albertans very much take the Alberta government's point of view on this. British Columbians, the majority say that, yeah, the BC government, in making the argument that we need to study this more, we need to delay the completion of this pipeline, if not derail it altogether, is something that a majority of British Columbians support and agree with. But guess what? There is a significant segment, if you look at that red bar under BC, that actually sides with Alberta's argument on this.
Is it unusual for a case that involves two provinces, both of which are at the far western end of the country, and therefore much of the rest of the country may rightly or wrongly feel they don't have a dog in this hunt? Is it unusual for the country to be so evenly split on this?
We don't tend to see such perfect 50-50 splits. That said, look, the further you get from Alberta and BC, the more people are inclined to say they don't really know or don't feel very grounded about the issue. But there are some key issues here that that Canadians, regardless of where they live in this country, can identify with. One's of jurisdiction. Who should have the final say over a pipeline or something with national implications? And also issues of the economy versus the environment. You know, these are the trade-offs that Canadians can get their heads around and are the ones who are driving that split decision. If it was up to, if you looked at those numbers, it would really be, kind of Albertans and British Columbians tilting towards completion of the project. But if you think about who's most opposed to it, Steve, it's not British Columbians, it's Quebecers.
Why would that be?
Well, again, jurisdiction, we already saw the people of Montreal say hell no to Energy East. That pipeline has gone away. And when you look at what's going on in Quebec, there is a tendency now for Quebec to be almost the most pro-green or pro-environmental province in this country.
Well, I was going to get to this a little later, but since you've brought it up, let's bring these numbers up right now, because this is province by province, or region by region, I guess, in some cases here. What the public across the country is saying. Let's look over to the right-hand side, the Quebec numbers you just referenced. Yes, Quebec, very much with British Columbia on this, even though they're far away. We saw the Alberta situation. Albertans are clearly in favor of the position of their own provincial government. And there's Ontario. Let's just focus on the Ontario numbers for a second here. Again, I'm not sure Ontarians think they have a dog in this hunt, but for whatever reason, we seem to be by a 12-point gap more in favor of one side than the other. How come?
This question is particularly about jurisdiction, right? Who should have the final say? And the really interesting thing about Ontarians is that they think they're the only province that thinks of themselves as Canadians first. When you ask people in every other part of the country, are you a British Columbian first? Are you a Nova Scotian first? Are you a Canadian first? Everywhere outside of Ontario, people are identifying with their province first, the country second. Ontarians think Ontario is Canada, and therefore they tend to take a more federalist, centralist point of view on this. Plus, you've also got a little bit of, again, the distance factor. It's not as though this pipeline is flowing through Mississauga, and if it was...
Might be a different view.
Possibly, yes.
Okay, let's then go, all right, having said that, now let's go back, because I do want to dive a little deeper on the British Columbia numbers, because we saw earlier that the British Columbia government, not by a huge margin, certainly not by Alberta-like margins, but by some margin, is opposed to this project. And can we bring that second set of numbers up, please, Sheldon? This is would you say you support or oppose the expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline? This is BC only, and what do we take from these numbers, Shachi?
Well, what we see is that British Columbians, in fact, sort of tilt towards the completion of this pipeline. And if you net out the folks who say that they're not sure, they don't know, that's about 20% of the province, you really do see there is more inclination to see this pipeline completed than not. But here's the kicker, here's the thing. Everything comes down to politics. And the people who are most strongly opposed to the completion of this pipeline are in and around Metro Vancouver. They represent a huge voting base, and they represent a huge voting base to this NDP government in British Columbia. It's a minority government, and it's a government on a knife's edge. It can't afford to alienate any more of that voting base and send it to the Green Party in BC. So they're having to thread a very careful needle. They've said yes to one major energy project in northern British Columbia, and on this one, they're trying to increase the point of pain and the price of pain for both Alberta and the federal government, in part because they need to do that politically, and in part because there are questions about jurisdiction here in the minds of the BC government.
And I guess the thing we have to remember is that those who are strongly opposed, this may be the one issue upon which they will cast their vote, whereas those who are in favor, this may be one of a menu of items upon which they will cast their vote. Fair to say?
Fair to say. And so that has implications not just for the NDP in British Columbia, but actually for the Trudeau Liberals in that province, because they were actually able to make a big breakthrough in that last election, in the 2015 election, in BC, which was a little bit unusual. And now the Trudeau government's had to spend down some political capital in order to say yes to this. We have to figure out what the implications are going to be in British Columbia as well as across the country. And we have some numbers on that.
Well, let's acknowledge that the numbers we're going to show next are from the 2015 federal election.
Yeah, vote last.
Yeah, so it's the last time people voted, and we want to find out where they were. There are those numbers right now. So again, here we are, 50-50 again. Whose perspective do you find more persuasive? Alberta in red or British Columbia in blue? And not surprisingly, there we are, 50-50 again from the last election in terms of the national total. I guess we shouldn't at all be surprised that Conservative Party supporters overwhelmingly like the Alberta perspective on this, right?
Right.
And then as we go through, let's go to the right-hand side of that graphic. New Democratic Party voters, not surprisingly, like the BC government's position, which is more anti-pipeline. Question, where does this leave the government?
That's a good question, because if you look at that middle bar, you will see that, you've got past Liberal voters kind of split on this. And they're a little bit, more inclined to take one side over the other. But what that says to me is there's actually a bit of a liability for the Trudeau Liberals politically. They can probably rely on, again, past Liberal support in places like Ontario and Atlantic Canada, but what is the implication for British Columbia, where so many seats were won, and will some be lost on the basis that people are not again, in Metro Vancouver, where the Trudeau Liberals had that breakthrough, are they going to pay a price? And if they don't, because, this is a balancing act. This is a very fine balance.
Total tightrope, right?
You saw the op-ed in the Globe and Mail in the last few days talking about how the Trudeau government can't get big energy projects done. That's the view of Bay Street. So who do you tick off? Do you tick off people in Metro Vancouver who don't necessarily want this but voted federally Liberal last time? Or do you tick off people on Bay Street who are big fundraisers and big voters in many cases for the Trudeau Liberals?
The conundrum of a centrist party.
Indeed.
Let's just finish up on this. We saw that things got so heated between these two NDP governments that there was actually okay, you don't want to approve our pipeline, we're not going to import your British Columbia wine anymore. Where do things stand on all of that right now?
Well, first of all, who knew that there were interprovincial trade barriers on wine exports? I knew that, but a lot of people don't. So this has sort of highlighted a larger issue about interprovincial trade. I can tell you that the wine war appears to be over for the time being. There is wine in our time once again. Albertans can pop corks with joy when it comes to drinking some very nice blends of Okanagan wine. That said, what's happened is the BC government said, okay, well, we won't necessarily go ahead full steam with saying that we're going to regulate the restriction of bitumen through oil pipelines through BC. Instead, we're going to refer this to the courts. We're going to study it a little more. We're going to ask for an opinion. It was a way for both sides to maybe back away a little bit and save some face, but this battle is far from done.
Indeed. We always appreciate your visits here, Shachi Kurl from the Angus Reid Institute, where she is the executive director. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.